Welcome to the HFY Codex Tale. If you like our videos, keep supporting and subscribe to our channel. She chose a human for her experiment, but he refused to bow. Captain Arvana of the Zarnath Empire stood tall in her warship's chamber, arms crossed, golden eyes glowing. She was nearly 7 feet tall, with sharp, scaled skin and silver armor that reflected the light. Known across star systems as cold, powerful, and dominant, she had never been challenged. And now she was bored. Her empire had won another battle. Another planet had surrendered. The prisoners were weak, scared, silent, just like always. Until one caught her attention. A human. He stood alone in the back of the holding bay, shorter than her, unarmed, wearing worn-out clothes. His face showed no fear. His brown eyes met hers, calm, steady, and almost amused. Arvana tilted her head. "Bring that one to me," she ordered. 2 guards shoved the human into her private chamber. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He simply stood in the middle of the room, looking around like he was in a museum. Arvana circled him slowly. "You are not afraid." The human shrugged. "Should I be?" "No one speaks to me like that," she said. He smirked. "Maybe they should." She stopped walking. "What is your name?" "Kyle." "You belong to me now, Kyle," Arvana said firmly. "You are part of my experiment." He raised an eyebrow. "Experiment?" "I test dominance," she said. "How different species respond to control. You will obey, you will kneel." Kyle smiled. "Yeah, no, I'm good." Silence filled the room. The guards stiffened. No prisoner had ever spoken to Arvana that way, not and lived. She stepped closer, towering over him. "Are you rejecting my command?" Kyle looked up at her with calm eyes. "You're tall, shiny, and full of attitude, but where I come from, respect is earned, not demanded." Arvana bared her sharp teeth. "You dare insult me?" "No," he said. "I just don't worship bullies." She grabbed his shirt and lifted him a few inches off the floor. Her grip was strong. She expected him to beg, to shake, to plead. But Kyle only stared back. Then slowly he smiled. "You can lift me," he said, "but you can't break me." Arvana's grip loosened. Something inside her flickered. She dropped him. "You are strange for a human," she said. "And you're surprisingly curious for someone who sees others as toys," he replied. She turned away, annoyed and intrigued. This wasn't going to be like the others. Later in her private logs, she made a note. Subject: human male, name Kyle. Initial response to power: resistance. Shows no fear, no compliance, highly unpredictable. I may need more time or new methods. She paused, staring at the screen. Then she typed one more line. Interesting. That night, Kyle sat alone in the corner of his new quarters. There were no bars, no chains, just cameras and guards. But he didn't feel like a prisoner. He felt like a challenge. And he liked that. He smiled to himself. "She wants control," he muttered. "Let's see how she handles when she loses it." In her chamber, Arvana watched him through a screen. No fear. No rage. Just confidence. She leaned back, tapping her claw against the armrest. "Let's see how long you last, little human." But deep down, something inside her already knew. This one was different. She mocked his size and strength, then he grabbed her wrist. The training deck of the Zarnath warship was filled with noise, metal clashing, soldiers grunting, weapons flashing through the air. Arvana stood above them on the viewing platform, tall and proud, arms folded behind her back. Beside her stood Kyle, the human prisoner who had refused to kneel. He stood calmly, hands in his pockets, watching the chaos below without blinking. Arvana turned to him with a smirk. "You see that, human? That is real strength, not your soft earth ways." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Looks like a lot of angry people swinging sticks." Her smirk faded for a moment. Then she laughed, a deep, sharp sound. "Still bold, even when you're outmatched in every way." She stepped closer, towering over him again. "You're smaller, slower, weaker. If I chose, I could snap your neck in 2 seconds." Kyle didn't flinch. If size meant power, whales would rule Earth. Her eyes narrowed. "You mock me again." "No," he said calmly. "I just don't play your game." Arvana tilted her head, amused and annoyed. Oh, but you're in the game now. Would you like a chance to prove yourself? Kyle gave a short nod. Sure, show me what all this posturing is really worth. They moved down to the mat, surrounded by curious alien warriors. Hand-to-hand test, Arvana said to her crew. Observation only, do not interfere. Kyle stretched his neck lazily. Any rules? Arvana grinned. Try to survive. She lunged. Her movements were fast, blinding. She struck high, then low. A spin kick flew toward his chest. Kyle dodged left, barely missing the blow. She moved like a blur, a living weapon. He was slower, less trained. But he stayed on his feet. And then she made a mistake. She laughed while throwing a wide punch. Kyle ducked and grabbed her wrist. Hard. The impact stopped her. The room fell silent. Her warriors stared. Arvana's golden eyes locked on his hand, gripping her scaled wrist. He wasn't crushing her. He wasn't hurting her. He was controlling the moment. You swing like someone who's used to being feared, Kyle said softly. That's why you don't expect anyone to touch you. She didn't move. He didn't let go. Her breathing slowed, changed. No one had ever stopped her mid-strike before. Certainly not a human. Certainly not like this. Finally, he released her. No words, no smile. Just a quiet look that said, "You're not in control anymore." She stepped back, heart pounding. Was it anger? No. It was something else. Later in her personal logs, she wrote, "Today the human caught my wrist. My warriors saw I should feel rage, shame. But I feel awake. I fear I've misjudged him. He is not like the others. He is not weak." She paused, then added, "And neither am I when he's near." Meanwhile, Kyle sat alone in the quarters again. He stared at his hand, the one that had held her. Not with hate, not with fear, but with confidence. "She thinks she's testing me," he whispered. "Let's see how she handles being tested." She thought he would break, but he bit her instead. Captain Arvana stood alone in her chamber, packing. She had defeated stronger warriors. She had broken rebel leaders, but one human, unarmed and untrained, was still in her mind. Kyle hadn't begged. He hadn't bowed. And today he had grabbed her wrist. Not with fear, but with control. She ordered the guards to bring him again. This time she dismissed everyone else. No cameras, no soldiers. Just her and the human. Kyle walked in calmly, looking around. "Wow, you always call me when you're in a mood." Arvana stepped toward him. "You touched me in front of my crew, that was bold." He shrugged. "You tried to hit me, I just stopped you." She took another step closer. "You forget your place." Kyle smiled, soft but firm. "Maybe you forgot I don't have one." Silence filled the room. Then she moved. Fast. She closed the distance and pushed him against the wall, hand on his chest. Her face was close, too close. "You are mine," she said, low and dangerous. "You are part of my experiment." Kyle didn't push back. Didn't run. Instead, he leaned forward. And bit her. Hard on the shoulder. She gasped. It wasn't pain that stopped her. It was shock. In all her life, no one had dared. No one had touched her like that. The room froze. Her grip loosened. Kyle stepped back, looking into her glowing eyes. "That's how humans say enough," he said calmly. Arvana stood frozen. The bite didn't bleed, but it burned, not on her skin, inside her chest. Her fingers curled, her breathing shook. She should have hit him. She should have ordered his execution. But instead, she felt something strange. Respect. And something deeper she wouldn't name yet. She turned away. "Leave," she said quietly. Kyle walked to the door. Just before stepping out, he looked over his shoulder. "You wanted to see how far I'd go, right?" he said. She didn't answer. "I think we're just getting started." Then he left. That night she stood at her mirror. She touched the bite mark. Her body, a weapon of war, had been bruised by a single human, and she let him. She stared at her reflection, then whispered to herself, "What are you doing, Arvana?" Meanwhile, Kyle sat in his quarters, arms behind his head. He stared at the ceiling and smiled. "She's cracking," he muttered. "But I'm not." She locked him up for biting her, but then she couldn't stop visiting. The door slammed shut behind Kyle. Heavy locks clicked into place. Arvana stood on the other side, fists tight, heart pounding. He had bitten her in front of no one. But the mark still pulsed on her shoulder, warm, electric. "This is weakness," she whispered to herself. "He needs to be punished." So she did what commanders do. She put him in a cell. Kyle looked around the room. It was clean, silent, well lit. No chains, no cuffs, just four walls and a watchful red eye in the corner. "Not bad," he said. "I've had worse hotels." He lay down on the small bench and closed his eyes like he'd been waiting for a nap all day. The camera blinked. In her chamber, Arvana watched the screen. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He wasn't even curious. He was peaceful. That annoyed her. No, it fascinated her. No prisoner had ever made her feel this unbalanced. She shut the screen, only to turn it back on 5 seconds later. The next day, she walked down the dark corridor. Her boots echoed, the guards looked confused. "Captain," one asked, "visiting the prisoner." She didn't answer. She opened the cell herself. Kyle looked up from the floor, where he was doing push-ups. "You again," he said with a smirk. "Didn't expect your personal check-in so soon." She stepped inside. "Why did you bite me?" He stood, wiped his hands on his pants. "Because you needed someone to say no." She stared at him. "You are not special." He stepped closer, calm and close. "Then why are you here alone?" Arvana clenched her jaw. She was the one in command. She was supposed to study him, control him. But here she was, standing in the middle of a cell, unable to stop watching his eyes. "You act like you're in control," she said. "I don't need to act," he replied. She left without a word. But that night she returned. And again the night after that. Some nights they didn't speak. She would sit outside the cell, silent. He'd lean against the wall, waiting. Sometimes he'd ask a question about her past. Sometimes she'd answer. Sometimes she didn't. She began bringing him things. Real food, not rations. A book from Earth she'd found in a storage box. A pillow. He never said thank you, but his eyes always did. One night she walked in, no armor, no guards. Just her. He raised an eyebrow. "You keep coming back." "I'm observing," she said too quickly. He chuckled. "Sure, that's what all the late-night visitors say." She didn't laugh, but she didn't deny it either. That same night, she stood just outside the door, hand resting on the wall. She touched the mark he left on her shoulder. It had faded, but the memory hadn't. And every time she saw him, something inside her melted and rebuilt. Kyle, back inside, looked at the camera and whispered, "She's not locking me up anymore." He smiled. "She's letting herself in." Her own people mocked her for falling for a human. Then he silenced them all. Whispers moved through the warship like smoke. The crew had noticed the late-night visits, the longer conversations, the small changes in their commander's eyes. And most of all, they noticed the human hadn't been executed. Not punished. Just there. "She's soft," someone muttered in the barracks. "She's losing control," said another. "A human, seriously." They laughed, quiet at first, then louder. And it reached the wrong ears. Lieutenant Krex, second in command, didn't like it. Not the whispers. Not the human. And especially not the way Captain Arvana had changed. He approached her in the strategy hall, flanked by other officers. "Permission to speak freely," he said, loud enough for others to hear. Arvana looked up from her screen. "Granted." Krex crossed his arms. "You've spent too much time with the human. The crew is losing respect. So am I." Arvana's eyes narrowed, And what do you suggest? Krex smirked. Let me deal with him, one-on-one, just a demonstration. If he truly means nothing, you shouldn't mind. She said nothing, but Kyle had already walked in silent, unnoticed behind them. He heard everything. I'll accept, Kyle said calmly. Everyone turned. He walked forward, no weapons, no armor, hands in his pockets. But let's change the rules, he added. Krex laughed. You dare suggest terms prisoner? Kyle nodded. No weapons, no armor, just words. The hall went quiet. A circle formed, officers gathered, even low-rank soldiers peeked from corners. Arvana stood beside the wall, arms tight at her sides. Kyle stepped into the center. Krex followed, grinning. You're just a human, you don't belong here, he spat. Kyle looked at him, yet here I am. Krex snarled, you're a weak species, small, breakable. Kyle smiled, and yet your commander keeps visiting me. The room froze. Even Arvana's breath caught. Krex stepped forward, ready to strike, but Kyle didn't flinch. You think strength is size? Kyle said. No, strength is being the only one who says no to power and still survives. Krex growled, you're not strong, you're lucky. Kyle's voice dropped. No, I'm dangerous, because I'm the only one here who doesn't want your throne, but everyone listens when I speak. Silence. Then one of the officers from the back said softly, he's right. Another nodded. Krex looked around, his confidence cracked. And then he turned to Arvana. Captain, you can't let this continue. She stepped forward slowly. Her voice was clear. You challenged him, he accepted, he won. Krex's face twisted in disbelief. You defend him now. No, Arvana said, I respect him. After the hall cleared, Arvana found Kyle standing by the viewing deck, staring at the stars. You could have stayed quiet, she said. He glanced at her. You could have defended me, but you waited. I needed to know what you'd do, she said. And what did I do? He asked. She stepped closer. You silenced the entire ship without lifting a weapon. She turned to walk away, but stopped at the door. You still bit me, she said without looking back. Kyle smiled, and you still come back. She was meant to dominate the human, but now she was asking for his loyalty. Captain Arvana had never asked for anyone's help. She gave orders. She commanded ships. She conquered planets. But now she stood outside Kyle's quarters, alone, hesitating. The human who once bit her, silenced her officers, and refused to kneel, was now the only one she trusted. And the only one who made her feel like herself. Inside, Kyle sat cross-legged, sharpening a small knife, not to fight, just to pass time. He didn't react when the door opened. Didn't think you'd knock, he said softly. Arvana stepped in slowly, no armor, no mask, just her. I need to speak with you, she said. Kyle looked up. Her tone wasn't commanding. It was careful. There's a rebellion forming, she said. Some of my officers believe I've gone soft. They plan to challenge me during the next landing. Kyle nodded. Makes sense. You changed the rules by respecting me. She walked to the edge of the room and turned her back. I was supposed to control you, study you, dominate you. She faced him. But now I want you to stand beside me. Kyle stood up. Still calm. Still unreadable. You're asking me to fight for you, he asked. She looked into his eyes. No, she said, I'm asking you to choose me. That silence between them. It said more than words. Kyle stepped closer, just one pace. Why me, he asked. You command fleets, you could have any soldier. Arvana didn't blink. Because you don't follow blindly, and I need someone who won't let me lie to myself. Her voice lowered. I need someone who sees all of me and doesn't flinch. Kyle looked at her for a long time. Then finally said, all right. But if I stand with you, he added, I'm not following, I'm beside you as an equal. She nodded slowly. I wouldn't want anything less. Later that night, the crew watched something they'd never seen before. The human walking beside the captain. Not behind her. Not in chains. Beside her. Some stared. Some whispered, some stepped aside. And in that quiet hallway, as boots echoed on steel, a message spread across the entire ship without a word. He is no longer her experiment. He is her weapon. And her choice. As they entered the war room, Arvana leaned closer to him and whispered something no one else could hear. They expected me to control you. But you freed me. She tried to own him, but he became the one she couldn't control. The rebellion came faster than expected. Late at night, just before the ship's next landing, alarms blared through the halls. Weapons lockers were broken open. A group of elite officers, led by Lieutenant Krex, marched toward the command chamber. Their goal was clear: remove Arvana, take the ship, and erase the human infection from her rule. But Arvana wasn't hiding. She stood tall in the command hall, no armor, no guards. And beside her stood Kyle. No weapon in his hand. Just his eyes, sharp, calm, unshakable. Krex snarled, "You've lost your mind, Captain. You let this human twist your head. You chose weakness." Kyle stepped forward before she could speak. "I'm still right here," he said. "If you think I'm the weakness, come prove it." Krex drew his blade. But Kyle didn't flinch. "Your kind talks about strength like it's about size. But the strongest ones are the ones who can walk through fire and keep choosing not to burn the world down." He pointed to Arvana. "She doesn't need a throne made of fear. She needs people brave enough to follow her when she chooses a different way." Krex charged. Kyle moved. Fast. No armor, no blade, just precision. He dodged, ducked, and finally struck a pressure point under Krex's jaw. The alien dropped stunned. Not dead, but completely defeated. The rebels froze. Then slowly, one by one, they stepped back and dropped their weapons. The ship was silent. All eyes turned to Arvana. She looked at Kyle. He wasn't smiling, just breathing steady. Like always. Later, in her private chamber, she poured him a glass of something dark and warm. "You saved my command," she said. Kyle shrugged. "You were doing fine." She stepped closer. "When I first chose you, I thought you were mine to control." He looked up, and now. She exhaled. "Now I know I was the one caught." She placed the glass on the table and sat beside him. Not above him. Not across from him. Beside him. That night, the ship's log recorded a new entry. Captain Arvana retains command. All rebellion forces neutralized. Human asset reclassified. Not prisoner. Not threat. Not subject. Status partner. And somewhere in the galaxy's deep silence, a powerful alien warship continued its journey. Commanded by a woman who once believed power meant control. Now walking beside a human she could never conquer. And never wanted to. The end.